We've got 2 months until training camp, 2 months to dissect and figure this roster out and everything that's going to happen. So let's start with the basics. Why getting players in the right role could be the breakthrough today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is July 21st, 2025. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we're going to talk about why the Orlando Magic now may be in the best position to give the best roles to several players. We're going to focus today on Wendell Carter, why he is set up for success this year in what could be a make or break season. We're going to get to that and a whole lot more on today's episode of Locked On Magic. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. Whether you're listening to us first thing in the morning, whether you listen to us right when we upload, we truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. Be part of our Orlando Magic Dailies crew that listens every day. We are in our last week of guaranteed 5 days a week. We'll still be pretty regular here in the next couple of weeks as we kind of scale back for the not so busy part of the offseason. But we got a lot to get to before we get to Eurobasket and plenty more. So the Locked On Podcast Network, it's your team every day. This episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Last week, I put up a poll. I put it up on the Addo Magic Daily Twitter account. I put it up on the YouTube page, Locked On Magic, just asking, what is your biggest concern for next season? If you listened to our episodes last week, I started kind of hitting the brake a little bit. I know we're all gas, no brakes, Jacob Fatu here. But I wanted to hit the brakes a little bit because, well, yes, I share all your optimism. I share the belief that this team is indeed in for a special season. I've been telling my family members, my friends who ask me, like, how are the Magic going to be this year? I'm like, no, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be a really good team this year. I am a big believer in all of that. But there are still notable weaknesses. There are still things this team has to overcome. And there are still issues that this team has to resolve to be the team we think they can be. And we went over a bunch of them last week. I'm still concerned about their depth. You know, I am a little, people call me out on this and I'll agree to this. Little PTSD on the team's shooting. And frankly, I'll say this. The Magic have been such a bad offensive team for the last 15 years. I forget what a good offense looks like. I'll believe it when I see it. There's still work to do for this Magic team. Ultimately, we'll get to, I think, the one thing that could derail the Magic here in our second segment. So I don't want to dwell too much on the negative because this is a really exciting season, but let's continue. Let's be realistic. Let's continue to at least look at things with a realistic lens. The one thing I didn't list on that poll was the center position. And comments, this was added by people. That's what I crowdsource. I want to know what you're thinking. I saw a lot of people say the Magic need to address the center position. Wendell Carter isn't good enough, or Wendell Carter isn't the answer. And the Magic are going to be coming up short so long as he is there. And Wendell Carter, as much as Kentavious Caldwell-Pope was a scapegoat for a lot of the Magic's ills last year, Wendell Carter remains one too. And I'm not going to completely argue against that, to be perfectly honest. If you listen to the show, you know I am a Wendell Carter defender. You know that I think Wendell Carter does a lot more than people give him credit for. But look, he didn't have a good season last year. By his own admission, he did not perform to a standard. And look, he had career lows in points. He had career lows in field goal percentage. He could not shoot 30% from three. It was not a great season for Wendell Carter. Even though he played a career high in games, even though he met that goal. And so there are questions. I did a whole episode on Wendell Carter about a month ago now, 3 weeks ago now. It does feel like this is a make or break season. If we're looking at the Magic and we're looking at the fact that they're a second apron team, the fact that they got all these things, there is definitely some urgency right now to say Wendell Carter has to deliver. Wendell Carter has to give this team more or give them what they need. To me, I think Wendell was great defensively. And look, he showed himself in the playoffs. He was the only other player besides Paolo and Franz to average 10 points per game in the playoffs. He averaged a double-double in the playoffs. If Wendell Carter plays the way that he did in the playoffs, for the most part, we can argue a little bit about the defense, but his ability to hold his own on the perimeter against a Jaylen Brown, against a Jason Tatum, that was the linchpin of the Magic's defense. And Jason Tatum made all his mid-range jumpers. Jaylen Brown made all of his mid-range jumpers. That's what gummed up the Magic's defense a little bit in that series. But the Magic were determined, you're not going to beat us with threes. And Boston ended up doing that. And again, a lot of other things a factor in there as well. I am a big believer that for the most part, players aren't bad. Like, yeah, there's levels to this game and there are levels to things. But if you make it to the NBA, if you're established as a starter and Wendell Carter's a starting center, whether you like it or not, it's not about necessarily talent level or even ability. It's about the role that you're playing. You go back and look at the Magic's rebuilding teams. Nikola Vucevic was an all-star. Aaron Gordon is a key player on a championship level team. Victor Oladipo was an all-star. Tobias Harris has been a near all-star and a solid veteran for several teams along very many stops. What made those teams fail or what made those teams struggle was that the Magic asked more of them than they were capable of giving within the context of that team. They asked them to do too much. And so when I look at Wendell Carter, I see a player who has been asked to do too much, asked to be the linchpin defensively, both inside and outside, asked to be a high-level scorer or a higher usage score. Last year's usage rate was like 16%, very, very low. And I don't think, especially for how poor the Magic's offense was, that role suited Wendell Carter particularly well. And so I would argue that we are due for a Wendell Carter renaissance. That we are due for Wendell to find his groove, to find himself, to find what he needs to be the best version of himself. And look, and if it doesn't happen within this context, then yes, the Magic need to move on. Wendell Carter is at his best when he is playing off of other players. You're not giving the ball, tell him break it down or post up or anything like that. So yes, he has to make those jumpers. He has to crash the glass. He has to roll hard. He has to make a decent amount of threes. But unlike last year, this year's Magic team is not relying on him to do that as much. Paolo and Franz are going to get theirs. Desmond Bane is going to get his. Jalen Suggs is going to be a 15-point-per-game night guy too. The Magic don't need a lot of scoring from Wendell Carter anymore. They need him to keep defenses honest. They need him to make enough shots. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, it's a pass if he averages like 8 points per game. They still need him at 10 to 12 points per game with 8 or 9 rebounds per game. But this is the power of the Magic's depth. This is the power of that starting lineup now. Wendell Carter is truly the 5th starter. He's going to get open shots because of everything else that everyone else is creating. And it's his responsibility to make teams pay for leaving them open. Just like Desmond Bane's going to create driving lanes for Paolo Banchero. Paolo Banchero's gravity is going to create open shots for Jalen Suggs, who shot extremely well before the Paolo Banchero injury. They all play off of each other, and they will give each other space. That's what the good teams do. And so I would argue this coming season, Wendell Carter is going to be in a role that emphasizes his strengths. I want to dive into what that is and how he can make the most of this coming up here in just a moment. Plus, we'll talk about what could really derail the Magic season, which some people mentioned, but we need to talk about a little bit more. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Magic is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. What was one surprising thing you noticed when you start tracking your spending with Monarch? Well, you see where your money's going. Could be to all those subscriptions you have, could be to how much you're eating out, could be to any number of places. Knowledge is truly power. And if you know where your money's going, you can put it to better use. That's what Monarch Money is. It is a tool to take control of your finances. So use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. We're going to get to a point, and again, it's everything feels very hypothetical right now. Like we think we know how this is going to work. We'll get a copy of 2K here in about a month to begin playing around with this, but we don't know how this is going to work. One of the more fascinating things about the Magic is that on paper, they look amazing. I am really excited about what this team can be on paper. I am super excited about it. But at the end of the day, it's all guessing. Might be educated guessing, but it's guessing. We don't know how this thing is going to work. We don't know what it's actually going to look like. And so it's hard to say what a primary role can be or how Paolo will play off of Bane, how Bane will play off of Franz, how Suggs will play off of all of them. And yeah, how Wendell Carter fits into that mix, searching for his shots and searching for his way to impact the game. What I really think is these changes, this addition to the roster, to me, it clarifies roles. And because you're asking players to do less, because that burden is spread out a little bit more, it simplifies what everybody does. And so we're using Wendell Carter as the example today, but you can go down the list. And we'll probably do an episode for the rest of the summer, just talking about how roles are simplified for everyone else. Jalen Suggs was shooting like 45% on 6 or 7 catch and shoot 3-point attempts per game in the first 5 games before Paolo Banchero's injury. That could be who Jalen Suggs is. That could be who Desmond Bane will be. And so to me, this is a very good thing for Wendell Carter. Because now Wendell Carter, yeah, there's probably more pressure for him to be efficient when he gets his shot attempts because he's not going to get as many. He'll get maybe 10, 11 shots per game. But now he doesn't have to worry about the pressure of, oh, I have to score 15 points or 12 points or 13 points or whatever it is. That burden is spread out more among several different players. That's really the power that Desmond Bane gives this team. Is that power is spread out to everybody. That responsibility is lightened, is lessened, is shared with everybody now. And that's what has really changed here. That is what has shifted. What we're seeing And what we're going to see is, I hope it means Wendell Carter focuses on his defense. I know that there is a criticism that Wendell Carter is not a great rim protector. And no, he's not a fly out of nowhere shot blocker. That's not who he is. And maybe you can't win in the NBA with that anymore. Maybe you do need that hulking big man to protect the rim. I'll note Wendell Carter had a better defensive field goal percentage at the rim than Goga Bitadze last year, but he's not swooping out of nowhere to make a crazy play. What stood out in the playoffs more than anything else was that he dominated the glass in a way that he didn't in the regular season. He only averaged like 7-8 rebounds per game. He was above 10 rebounds per game in the playoffs. That is the right role for Wendell Carter. That is Wendell Carter doing his thing, unleashed defensively, and with fewer offensive responsibilities, maybe fewer shot choices. He'll still be a lever and a pivot in the high post. He'll still have passing decisions to make. But without that, he can truly focus on the defensive end and have others create his offense for him. Now, that doesn't mean he's not working. It doesn't mean he's not doing things. But to me, it's about fitting him into the right role. Again, this is just a personal theory, having watched a decade of this team rebuilding. Most of the players in the NBA are pretty good, but they have ceilings. And if you ask them to do too much, they struggle, they fail. That's where teams fall apart. When players can't star in their roles because they're not able to play those roles consistently. And again, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is the ultimate answer, that Wendell Carter is not a championship level starting center. I'll listen to those arguments. I don't know if I necessarily disagree with them, even though I am a Wendell Carter defender. But now Wendell Carter is moving into a more defined, more focused, sharper role that does fit his skills. He doesn't have to do too much. Others will pick up the slack. And then there will be moments when he does too. Here's the reality of things last year. Wendell Carter was dealing with a lot last year. And he was the first to say it. I listened back to his exit interviews. He was the first to really say he was dealing with a lot last year. He didn't have the offseason he wanted because he was recovering from the surgery on his left hand. He broke his left hand, broke a bone in his left hand very early in the season, missed some time, came back, pretty much admitted he came back too quickly. It was never right. Had a surgery on it early in the offseason. That took out a lot of his summer. He wasn't able to really work on things. He was determined to be healthy the entire season, and he played 68 games. He played the most games in a regular season in his career, but he suffered a knee injury early in the season, missed a couple weeks, came back, played all the way through. So he did that, but it was disappointing. He never really got himself back on track. So he has a full healthy offseason to get himself ready. And now a very clear different role to prepare for. So we'll see what Wendell Carter looks like. And again, we're going to talk about this in a minute. He's got to prove he can get through the season. He's got to prove that he can be healthy for an entire season again. We're about to find out what role Wendell Carter can play and whether this is the right team and the right role for him. Obviously, the Magic are in a heightened mode right now. They're looking to win. Look, let's be real. They want to win a championship by the 2027 season. They want to win in 2027. They want to not just be talking about the championship as an aspiration in 2027. They want to say, okay, 2026 was our stepping stone. We proved we could win a series. We proved we're players. Now we're going for the whole enchilada. And if Wendell Carter proves he can't be that guy, then they need to move on. Extension, throw extension to the wind. That's the reality of where we're at. And that's why it does feel like it's make or break for Wendell Carter. That's why it feels like so much is on the line right now. But I think Wendell will be in a role that fits him better. I think he will be in a better headspace. I think he will be in a better physical space. And I think he will be in a better space, period, to help this Magic team be successful. But we'll see when we get there in 2 months. Let's talk then about the big thing that could actually derail the Magic season, something that we don't want to mention too loudly, but we do have to talk about. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. So the winner of that poll that I mentioned that I ran was injuries. Look, the Magic had a very injured season last year. I believe they lost the fifth most wins in the league last year due to injury, according to Basketball Index. They were one of the most injured teams. The Thunder were also very injured. They won a championship, so it's not the be-all, end-all. But look, the top four scorers on the team last year, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Jalen Suggs, Mo Wagner, all missed significant time. All were ineligible for awards. Paolo Banchero missed 2 months with the oblique injury. Franz Wagner missed 20 games. Jalen Suggs played only 36. The Magic's top trio played only 6 games and 97 minutes together, as everybody in the Magic organization repeated ad nauseum during summer league games. Mo Wagner was injured in December. Those are your top four scorers, all missing significant time. As much as we all should be and are disappointed by the way the Magic season ended and where they ultimately finished last season, it was a miracle the Magic got to 41 wins. It was a miracle they were the 7th seed. It was a credit to how good this team can be that they still were able to accomplish what they accomplished last season. Would it have happened in the West? Absolutely not. But I do want to give credit where credit is due. The problem is, this is now a thing. Injuries are a thing, and the Magic have a lot of players, and they may not have chronic injury issues. They may not have repeated injury issues, but it is now a thing. The Magic have a lot of players who have dealt with a lot of injuries. And whether the Magic are as successful as we think they can be may still come down to health. Now, that's actually the story every year. Just look at the playoffs this season. Health was a major story in every playoff series. Even the series against the Celtics for the Magic, Boston was without Drew Holiday for most of the series. That's a sweep if Drew Holiday plays. I'm sorry. If Drew Holiday plays game 3, the Magic do not win that game. Kristaps Porzingis was dealing with his illness. Big part of the Magic's defensive strategy was to let Kristaps Porzingis beat them. He did that in game 4. He really didn't do it in any other game in the series. But if he's healthy, it's a very different series. Again, Magic probably gets swept. Jason Tatum missed his first playoff game in game 2. Didn't matter. Celtics still won. Tatum was incredible that series. Again, injuries are part of the story. And obviously the Magic can say, oh, boo-hoo, we didn't have Jalen Suggs, Mo Wagner, and yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. While Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner are very, 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 very reliable, and that is going to be enough to get the Magic to that. Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner playing 60 games, the Magic will get to 41 wins for the most part. Before last season, Wagner missed only 15 games in 3 seasons, and Banchero only missed 12 games in 2 seasons. There is no reason to think either one of those guys won't hit 70 games. But Suggs played in only 35 games last year. That was a career low, but he's hit 70 games only once in his career. That was the 2024 season. Desmond Bane has a checkered injury history. Various injuries. A lot of he actually had an oblique injury early in the season last year. He hit 70 games just once in his 5-year career. Now, he played 69 last year, so good, was relatively healthy last season, but just 58 and 42 games the 2 seasons before. Wendell Carter hit the high water mark of his career at 68 games last season, but his clear goal before the season last year was to make it through the season entirely healthy, which he didn't accomplish, but he still played a career high. He played 50 some odd straight games, the longest stretch of his career without missing a game due to injury. Injuries, and of course, Mo Wagner, probably not going to be back until December. He's coming back from an ACL. We don't know. Injuries were the defining story of last season. And while I think that the Magic are able to spread out the offensive load, and hopefully that will mean fewer injuries, and Look, the Magic play a chaotic defensive style. They play physical. Like, there are going to be nicks and bruises over the course of a season because of that. I think the Magic are better prepared with the way their offense should spread out and spread among several players. This is still a top-heavy roster. Like, Tyus Jones will probably be good for 10, 11 points. Anthony Black last year averaged about 8 or 9. Like, if he can get up to 11, 12, that's great. Outside of the big four players, who on this team can give you a quick spark for 20? Say what you want about Cole Anthony. The Magic could get a quick 20 from him. The Magic could get a quick 20 from Mo Wagner. So there is one guy at least. But that, to me, is the big issue. There is depth on this roster, but I wouldn't call it like high offensive depth. I wouldn't call it, oh, we're going to be out Desmond Bane for a couple weeks. Replacing his scoring would actually be very tough, other than Paolo and Franz just doing more, which they can do. They showed us they can do that this year. That's not to say the Magic aren't a better team. That isn't to say the Magic aren't a better offense. They are better. But ultimately, success for this team is going to come down to, are they healthy? Are they dealing with injuries that particular day? And to me, that does remain the biggest question, because the Magic have a lot of players that typically miss time year over year. Not like Paolo and Franz missed time last year. I'm not worried about Paolo and Franz. They're going to play 70. They're going to play 70 plus games again. Desmond Bane hasn't really done that. Wendell Carter, he's never done that. Jalen Suggs, he's done it once. So there is a concern of when that injury hits, are the Magic going to be prepared for it? And can they survive that? They're in the East. They can survive it. They'll be fine. But ultimately, the goal has to be to have your guys healthy for the playoffs. And that's going to be the big, big, big story to follow throughout the season. Whether the Magic hang on in that way. Just something to consider. I'm not here raising alarms or pulling the fire alarm or anything like that. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm just noting it, saying we understand this is the risk. This is something the Magic have calculated for. It's something to think about here as we have 2 months to go before training camp. But that's going to do it for me today. We're going to save our last thoughts on Summer League for tomorrow, if we ever even get to it, because it's Summer League. If you watch Friday's game, you're a sicko like me. Appreciate it. I have my thoughts on that game on my Patreon page, but I think we could skip that last Summer League game, to be perfectly honest. We'll see if the Magic do anything. We're starting to see some two-way guys as Summer League closes here. I've got the game on behind me. If you notice, we looking over my left shoulder at the score. We're in the middle of the third quarter here. It's Summer League. Who cares? But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You can, of course, follow me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places you can download podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can check us out on YouTube. Search for Locked On Magic. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us there on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to check out my Patreon page, your Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go make Locked On NBA your second listen of the day, because there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. We'll be back tomorrow again, wrap up Summer League one last time, see if I can scrounge out a segment on that. We'll see. It's we're getting to the bottom of the barrel here, but we'll find some things to talk about. Try and get some guests on as well. But until then, let's start the week off strong. We'll see you again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Magic.